This is Everyday Spirituality with connect.faith. I am Debbie Ronkema, and I'm here today with Kat Nemec. Kat is the owner of Studio Kat, which is a graphic design firm, and she's also the creator of a blog called Swooning. Most people do know you from the artist side, but in the last few years, you've been doing a lot of writing, and I really wanted to invite you to talk with us today about how that came to be. How did you find that writing voice over these last few years?
Hi, thank you for having me. Yes, I'm a graphic designer, and that is my main hat, along with being a mom and a volunteer. And swooning came from expressing myself on Facebook and just sharing little stories, little swoons about fun things that I had experienced in the day or memories. It also came from a youth sermon at the Presbyterian Church where we were reminded right before Thanksgiving to be grateful and thankful. And so I decided that I was going to try to be grateful or thankful for something every day for the month of November, which is always a really stressful time, of course. But I really wanted to focus on being thankful for the little things. So I would write a Facebook post every day about being thankful. And it was an amazing exercise for me. And just brought a lot of positivity and goodness into my life. And I would end a lot of them with swoon. And people started to say like, oh, I don't want November to end. I want to keep these thankful, this thankful series going. And so at one point, a woman who's a writer in the neighborhood and teaches writing in the neighborhood said, you can write and you should write more. And you should have a blog and it should be called Swooning. And, you know, I'm a graphic designer. I brand things. It was the perfect name. So I was like, I have a brand now. I have a great name, thanks to Wendy Freed, and I am going to start this blog. And then the pandemic hit and I had a lot of time on my hands. So I continued the blog.
Fantastic. And have you found it to be mostly about gratitude, or are there other places in you that you write from?
I write from my heart. I don't edit. I try not to hurt people's feelings. So if it's something that I've experienced that I have a big emotional response to, but I think it might be a bigger emotional response for someone else, I don't write. But for the most part, it's just things that happen throughout the day. When I'm taking a walk, something will pop in my head and that will become a swoon. And they're happy, they're thankful, but a lot of it is online self-therapy where I'll be walking and I'll notice something, or driving. A lot of swoons pop in my head when I'm driving. And I'll realize, wow, there's always like a thread, like that reminds me of that, which reminds me of that, which reminds me of that. And then this whole story ends up in my head, and then I just have to get it out. So there's really no plan for what they're going to be. There's a lot of whining, I'm pretty whiny in some of them. I try not to be political, but sometimes I'm just like, what's going on? And it gets a little political, and then I try to rein it into being open to other people's point of views, which is really hard for me. So yeah, a lot of it is self-therapy. And I think actually people really respond to that because social media is usually about that like picture where everybody's smiling and perfect. And what you didn't realize is that 3 seconds before that picture, your kids were like ripping each other's eyes out, and your husband was annoyed about something, and the dog was barking. And we don't see nobody posts those pictures. So my swoons sort of talk about just not the pretty that we all
genuine
live. Yeah, like I try
what real life is like. Yeah. And have you found that people have written their stories back to you? Have you gotten that kind of response?
That has happened a few times where somebody said, I think it was one about bathrooms, about my grandma's bathrooms. And I had two really different grandmas. So I had a really, 100, I mean, this is unique in itself. I had a 100% German grandma who lived in Queens, and her house was immaculate and everything was in its place, and her clothes were immaculate, and there were little porcelain figures and dolls from pre-war Germany, and everything was very rigid. She was lovely, but things were rigid, and you would go to grandma's house and have tea in a China when you were 3. And then my other grandma was Armenian, 100% Armenian, survived the Armenian genocide. And her house was about smells and warmth and food and, rolling around on Oriental rugs and dancing to grandpa playing the oud and playing backgammon, and just this sensory input of all things warm, and a little crazy,
Yeah.
And when I went to
more different. Yeah.
Right. Couldn't have been more different. When I went to German grandma's house, the bathroom had the little towels, and then the towels on top of the towels with the embroidery, and the lady who covered the toilet paper with the crocheted thing, and everything was matching in color. And when I went to my other grandma's house, she would lift me up on the big sink and she would wash my hands within her hands with warm water. And it was just the most cozy feeling ever to just have someone just care so much about getting you clean and keeping you cozy. So I described these 2 bathrooms in one swoon, and I got such a response of people saying, we had that tile. I can smell my grandma's house now. Oh, my grandma had Chanel perfume too. And, it was really fun to hear that just a story, which was so my story. I mean, nobody else has that story, evoked other people's memories.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And I loved getting their responses. And people don't want to do public responses. It's funny, but people will private message me. And that was, and I feel like I want to share this, but you can't share it,
Right. But
one
that's
man
really
did response to a Mother's Day swoon that I did. And he said, I didn't have a nice mother. And he told me all the nasty things that he lived with. And I was like, I am not prepared for this. I am not a therapist. I don't know how to respond to this. But I did, because he was open about it. And we've become friends now on social media. And he has his own blog, which is awesome. And that's been a really nice development. So
you've been able to connect with people that really needed connection. That's just amazing. Yeah.
And that are living their lives in really amazing ways. He has this kind of blog that's more travel oriented, and all of the goodness that he sees, that he just talks about in little blurbs and stuff. And so he has a good life. He might have had a bad mommy, but he has a good life, and he's made it a good life. So that's been fun.
I love that. Well, and I know that when I read them, you write them in such a way that invites the reader to emotionally connect their experiences with your experience. And that's really powerful, to kind of tell a story in a way that connects people through words. It also makes me think about, kind of great that you started during the pandemic, because we needed even more than usual to figure out how to connect. And I also think it's really important what you said about how the social media presence that we all have gotten used to is all about everything being perfect. And reading something from somebody that's just being real is a nice break in the midst of all the other pieces that we see. So is it hard for you to be that real, or is that just who you are? There's no other way for you to be. I'm not sure which of those two is the answer to that.
So yeah, no, I am to the point of ridiculous and oversharer. I am an open book. I have so many faults that I work on, but I also embrace. I don't believe in perfection. I wish I could be a better graphic designer, a better wife, a better mother, a better friend, a better everything, but I'm not. I like to say I'm a person who gets things done because I'm really okay with getting it done at 80%. I don't really believe there's 100% because I think your 100% and my 100% are really different. So if we all just get over the fact that something has to be perfect, because it's never going to be perfect for everyone, right? Like,
right.
You know that when, in my 20s, I realized with my siblings, we had 3 completely different upbringings in the same house, right?
Okay.
And what was perfect for me was not perfect for my brother or my sister, and what was perfect for them was not perfect for me. So, and more power to my parents for doing the best they could. And one of the last things my dad said to me before he passed away was, we did the best we could. And that was such an amazing gift of parenting advice of like, just do the best you can, like 80% is fine. It's great. So to show my flaws, you know what? People are going to see them anyway. So I might as well embrace them. And I don't know.
Really
maybe
powerful.
It's a thing like I want to show you first. I don't know.
That's right. I'll put it out there first, and then I don't have to hear it for a surprise from the first time. Yeah. But I think it's really a powerful way of connecting with people and helping other people to do the same, to accept less than perfection in themselves, because we're not going to ever get there if we do that. Also, it makes me think that, are there times when you find you're communicating with people that are somehow difficult to communicate with through the swoons? And in other words, you mentioned staying away from politics to some degree. Do you find that people that you can't connect with in other ways can connect with you through there? What do you think?
So I've been thrown off a few Facebook pages for being political. And I was like, fine, and don't read it. Like if you have a choice to read something or to not read something, if you don't agree with what I'm saying, feel free to go find something you agree with. But there's a reason you're continuing to read and be angry. Yeah. So I try to live that life anyway, where I watch news broadcasts of channels I just don't agree with. And I watch going like, really? Is this really going on? But I think it's important to see where other people are getting their information and to understand where other people are coming from. So I would hope the same thing happened with me, where people would read the blog to see how other people think, and my son has said he doesn't read my blog. And I understand that, because maybe it's a little bit close, like to read what your mom is saying, so he's told me he will read my blog when I'm dead.
That's nice.
So that he sees who I was, which is interesting.
That is, because it feels like what he's saying is, I want to know the mom that I know, and I don't necessarily need all the other information.
Exactly. You can just be my mom, and I don't need to know what's going on in you, because you're supposed to be my mom. I don't need to go know what struggles you're going through, because my struggles are what you're supposed to be dealing with, which I kind of love, as they say, like, your kids are your kids. Doesn't matter if they're 50, your kids are your kids. So Yeah, I don't even know what your question was anymore, but
That's
let me
okay.
know if I didn't answer it.
It was a good answer. It was a good answer. So, since most people know you through the artistic visual arts side, how do these two things intersect for you? Or are they just totally different?
Oh, I think for me, they're really, really, really similar.
Okay.
I was never really a good student. I had what I now look at as probably learning disabilities, or differences. I had learning differences. I was great at people and not great at books. I definitely, processing math was ridiculous. I still can't do fractions. So art for me was really important, and production was really important. So I produced plays and water ballets and
Oh, fun.
created yearbooks. And so that was always my outlet. I designed scenery and props, in middle school and high school. And I still do that to this day.
Right. Yeah.
What I never did was write, because I just assumed that was a school thing. That was what
Uh-huh.
smart people did. Um, and it so it really wasn't until the Facebook's writing these little blurbs that I got positive feedback for the first time in my life about writing.
Okay.
Um, like we pigeonhole, and I think this used to happen more, but we pigeonhole each other and our children into roles. So, this one might be the artist, and this one might be the
Mm.
scientist, and this one might be the Boy Scout volunteer kid, and this one might be the gymnast. And it isn't until we are in our 20s and kind of get out of where we were that we start to try to figure out that, like, you don't just have to be one thing.
Right.
So I don't just have to be the graphic designer, I can be more of a graphic designer who's also really good at production and timelines and keeping people on task and doing scenery for the play and making props for the play or costumes, um, or writing. And
Yeah.
writing was just the last thing that kind of popped in. And then during the pandemic, then I was, doing crafting, and I started really, really, really cooking and baking like crazy things, because I went from working like 12 to 16 hours a day to working 2 hours a day.
Mm.
And there was a lot of time to fill. And there's only so much, binge TV you can do without losing your mind. So I just started all different creative things. And I think, you know, that was the gift of time that the pandemic gave a lot of people,
Right. Right.
that never
To
would have
discover
happened.
pieces of you that you wouldn't have had time to find. Yeah,
True, true.
that's pretty great. That's pretty great. So, is there anything else that you've been thinking about that you'd like to share with us today?
Oh, you're so kind, and always reach out for ideas and goodness from people, and I appreciate that. No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm working more now, so I'm swooning less now.
Ah,
And I really want to work on that. I really want to work, okay, maybe if I can't do this 2 or 3 times a week, maybe I'm just rigid about you have to swoon at least once a week. But I don't want to be a person who feels like I have to swoon, because that sounds insane. Who has to swoon, right? That's the whole, like, that doesn't make any sense.
right.
So my new goal after a week or two of not really doing any writing was, okay, how do swoons pop in your head? And that's by walking or driving. So my goal is once or twice a week to go for a super long walk or a super long drive by myself in my own head, and hope that something pops in, so that it's mandatory swooning without the mandatory.
Ooh, I love that. That's the habits kind of goal. Like if I
Yeah,
do my habit, the swoon will come. If I do
I'm
my
hoping.
yes.
I'm hoping that that works, because otherwise it just becomes one of those things that isn't emergency. Nobody is going to die if I don't get a swoon out. Whereas my clients need me to get their jobs out, and the cats need to be fed, and the dog needs to be walked, and I like to make a nice dinner. So it, there's always that one thing for yourself that gets pushed and pushed and pushed. And that's my goal. That's my last goal, is like,
Yeah.
we learned to pay attention to ourselves because we had quiet and we had time. Well, those of us without children at home did. The people who have had children at home for the last year and a half, my heart goes out to them. But those of us whose kids are gone, it was a little bit of a gift in the insanity and the heartbreaking situation that was going on. And we need to remember to hold on to some of that.
Right.
And I need to remind myself, because it's so easy to get caught up in it all again.
Right. And to go back to the part of life where everything else was dictating your schedule, and missing the moments that really do feed your soul. So I'm just really grateful that you taught us that idea of starting with a habit that's sort of a trigger for the creative process. Because I know some people do something like, at 2 o'clock, no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to stop and try to do XYZ, play music, or whatever it is, to make space for what it is that we really want to not lose from what we've learned. So thank you.
I envy those people.
Yes.
I respect and I envy those people. And I want to become one of those people.
That's great. That's great. So Kat, where can people find out more about you and your work?
So graphic design Kat is at Studio Kat with a K, Inc.com, STUDIOKATINC.com. And that is most of my graphic design work. I work for mostly nonprofit organizations doing branding and newsletters and annual reports and stuff. And then Swooning Kat is at swooning.me, a WordPress website, and on Facebook also at Swooning. And my picture's there, so you'll see it. And I would love if you came and read and enjoyed, but also I would love if you gave feedback and told your own stories, because that's really fun for me to hear from people.
Awesome. Thank you. So thank you so much for coming and being with us. This has been Everyday Spirituality with connect.faith. And you can find us at all the places you regularly subscribe to podcasts. And if there's someone you know that might like to hear the story that you heard today from Kat, please feel free to share. Thanks so much.
Thank you.